I exposed my sister's affair at our family barbecue after years of her bullying my wife, and now she's pregnant with her doctor's baby while trying to steal back her kids. I never thought I'd be the person to cause a scene at a family gathering, but after what happened this weekend, I'm second-guessing everything. My sister, 34F, and I, 32M, have always had a complicated relationship. Growing up, she was the golden child. Straight A's, popular, the whole package. I was the quiet, average kid who didn't really stand out. Our parents never made it obvious they favored her, but the subtle differences in how they treated us were always there. When I met my now wife Sarah, 31F, 6 years ago, my sister Claire immediately took a disliking to her. At first, it was subtle eye rolls when Sarah spoke, or forgetting to include her in family events. Over time, it escalated to more direct comments about Sarah's appearance, her job as a kindergarten teacher, glorified babysitter according to Claire, and even questioning why I would settle for someone like her. Sarah tried so hard to win Claire over, bringing thoughtful gifts, complimenting her, offering to help with her kids. Nothing worked. Claire would accept the gifts with a tight smile and later make comments to other family members about how tacky they were. My parents never stepped in, always making excuses that Claire is just particular about things or that's just how she is. The breaking point came at our annual family reunion this past weekend. About 40 family members gathered at my parents' lake house. Aunts, uncles, cousins, the whole circus. Claire's husband Tom, 36M, couldn't make it until the second day due to a work commitment, so Claire came with their kids alone on Friday. That evening, I stepped out onto the back deck to get some air and overheard Claire on the phone. She was speaking in a hushed, flirty tone I'd never heard her use with Tom. My suspicion was confirmed when I heard her say, "I miss you too, babe. I wish you were here instead of having to see him tomorrow." I was shocked but decided not to jump to conclusions. Maybe it was a pet name for Tom? But something felt off. Later that night, I noticed Claire constantly checking her phone and smiling at texts, even stepping away several times to make calls. The next morning, Sarah and I were having coffee on the porch when Claire approached. She was in a particularly nasty mood and started in on Sarah immediately. "Is that what you're wearing to the barbecue? Bold choice with your figure." Sarah just smiled and said, "I'm comfortable, thanks for your concern." Claire wasn't done. "Tom's bringing his colleague Mark today. He's single and successful. Exactly Sarah's type if she ever decides to upgrade." Something in me snapped. 6 years of watching my wife be degraded while maintaining her dignity. 6 years of my parents and other family members letting it slide. Speaking of upgrades, Claire, who were you talking to on the phone last night? Doesn't sound like Tom is your only option either. The color drained from her face. "What are you talking about? I heard you last night on the deck. I miss you too, babe. I wish you were here instead of having to see him tomorrow." Not exactly subtle. Claire's eyes widened. "You were spying on me? You're delusional." "Am I? Let's ask Tom when he gets here what he thinks about your late-night calls." Claire stormed off, but I noticed she was frantically texting someone. About an hour later, she announced that Tom had a work emergency and wouldn't be coming after all. During the family barbecue, Claire was unusually quiet. My aunt asked where Tom was, and Claire repeated the work emergency excuse. That's when I did something I'm not sure I should have. In front of everyone, I said, "That's strange, because Tom just pulled into the driveway." All eyes turned to see Tom walking toward us, looking confused. "What emergency? You texted me not to come, that you and the kids were coming home instead." The silence was deafening. Claire started to stammer about a misunderstanding when her phone chimed loudly. She grabbed it quickly, but not before my cousin sitting next to her glimpsed the screen and gasped. "Whose work Chris's and why is he sending you shirtless pictures?" What followed was absolute chaos. Tom grabbed Claire's phone. Claire was screaming that I had ruined her life, my parents were trying to usher the younger kids away, and various relatives were either stunned silent or openly gawking. Tom left with the kids after discovering months of explicit texts between Claire and her colleague Chris. Claire followed shortly after, but not before telling me she would never forgive me for humiliating her. Now my parents are furious with me. They said I should have approached Claire privately instead of orchestrating a public spectacle. Several family members have texted that while Claire was wrong to cheat, I was wrong to expose it that way. Sarah thinks I did the right thing defending her after years of abuse, but admits the timing could have been better. I keep replaying it in my head. Yes, I was angry about how Claire treated Sarah, but I didn't plan for everything to explode like that. I simply couldn't stand by and let her continue treating people like garbage while maintaining her perfect image. So, am I the asshole for exposing my sister's affair at our family reunion after years of her bullying my wife? So where to begin? The aftermath has been pure chaos. Claire hasn't spoken to me since storming out of the reunion, but she's been working overtime talking to everyone else in the family. According to my cousin who's still speaking to me, Claire is spinning a whole new narrative. She's telling everyone that Chris is just a friend who she leans on because Tom has been emotionally unavailable for years. The shirtless pics? Apparently, he's a personal trainer showing her proper form for exercises. Sure, Claire. Whatever helps you sleep at night. Tom called me yesterday. Never thought I'd have a heart-to-heart with my brother-in-law, but here we are. He sounded exhausted, like he hasn't slept in days. He thanked me for bringing everything to light, which honestly made me feel both better and worse. Turns out he's had suspicions for months but kept dismissing them because, in his words, Claire always made me feel crazy for questioning anything. Classic gaslighting. He's staying at his brother's place with the kids while trying to figure out next steps. The real surprise came from my parents. Dad showed up at my house unannounced the day after the reunion. I braced for another lecture about how I'd ruined everything, but instead, he broke down in the kitchen. Through tears, he admitted they've enabled Claire's behavior our entire lives because she reminded him so much of his mother. Same temperament, same sharp tongue. He said watching how Claire treated Sarah reminded him of how his mother treated my grandmother, and he hated himself for never stepping in. First time I've ever seen my father cry. Mom's reaction has been less evolved. She called to inform me that Claire is going through a difficult time and I need to apologize for my cruel public humiliation. When I refused, she hung up. An hour later, she texted that I've chosen my wife over blood and she needs time to process this betrayal. I replied that protecting someone from years of bullying isn't betrayal, it's basic human decency. She left me on read. The extended family is basically split down the middle. My dad's siblings are firmly Team Tom, saying Claire's behavior is inexcusable. Mom's side is more divided, with the older generation giving Claire the benefit of the doubt and the cousins messaging me privately to say they've always thought she was awful but were afraid to say anything. The most unexpected development came yesterday. Claire's work Chris found me on social media. Turns out, Chris had no idea Claire was married. She told him she was divorced with kids in a custody arrangement. He sent screenshots of conversations where she described Tom as her controlling ex who she still had to deal with because of the children. When Chris saw a family photo Claire accidentally included in the background of a selfie and questioned who the man was, she claimed it was her brother. Yes, her brother. Me. I'm apparently her ex-husband in this twisted alternate reality she's created. I forwarded everything to Tom, who's meeting with a divorce attorney tomorrow. He asked if Sarah and I would be willing to provide statements about Claire's behavior over the years, which we're absolutely doing. Sarah's been my rock through all this. Last night she confessed something that broke my heart. She's been keeping a journal of every interaction with Claire for the past 4 years, initially as a way to make sure she wasn't imagining the hostility. There are over 100 entries. Reading through it made me realize how much more went on when I wasn't around. The subtle digs, the accidental exclusions, the backhanded compliments. I feel awful for not protecting her more. Claire finally texted me this morning, "Hope you're happy with the family you've destroyed." I haven't responded. What's there to say? She destroyed it herself, one lie at a time. I'm seeing a family therapist next week to work through all this. Never thought I'd be the one to bring down the family golden child, but maybe she needed to fall from that pedestal. Part of me feels vindicated, but mostly I just feel sad for her kids who are caught in the middle of this mess. What's the protocol here? Do I maintain no contact with Claire? Try to have a relationship with my niece and nephew? Has anyone navigated something similar without completely losing your mind in the process? It's been 2 months since everything went down at the family reunion, and if anyone had told me then where we'd be now, I would have laughed in their face. Life has a way of being wildly unpredictable. First, the Tom situation. After our last conversation, he went full detective mode on Claire's phone records and bank statements. Turns out work Chris wasn't the only side piece in this story. There were at least 3 others spanning the last 4 years. 3. The most shocking was Claire's obgyn, who she'd been seeing both professionally and... Well, you get the picture. Tom found hotel charges, gifts purchased that never made it home, and weekend work conferences that never existed. The divorce proceedings are moving faster than anyone expected. Claire didn't contest anything after Tom's lawyer presented the mountain of evidence. She's getting minimal custody, supervised visits twice a month, after Tom's lawyer revealed texts where she complained about how the kids cramped her style and discussed dumping them with babysitters to meet up with her various flings. But here's where things get truly bizarre. Last week, I'm at the grocery store grabbing some beer for game night when I literally bumped carts with none other than work Chris. We both froze, staring at each other like we'd seen ghosts. After an awkward moment, he suggested we grab coffee. Curiosity got the better of me, and 30 minutes later we're sitting in a corner booth while he unloads everything. Claire had told Chris that Tom was violent and abusive. She showed him doctored photos of bruises, which were actually makeup. She used to do theater in college, and fabricated stories about being afraid for her life. Chris, believing he was rescuing a domestic violence victim, had been helping her plan her escape for months. He'd even put down a deposit on an apartment for her. The real kicker? Claire told Chris I was aware of the abuse but sided with Tom because he was financing my failing business. I don't even have a business. I've been working at the same accounting firm for 8 years. She painted this entire alternate reality where I was this money-hungry monster enabling my sister's abuser. Chris admitted he'd been quietly hating me for months based solely on Claire's stories. We sat there for almost 3 hours comparing notes, both realizing how completely we'd been manipulated. Before leaving, Chris handed me a flash drive containing all their correspondence, in case Tom needs it for the divorce. I passed it along, though Tom's lawyer said they already had more than enough. My parents have done a complete 180. Mom showed up at our house last Sunday, red-eyed and clutching a bottle of wine. "I've been a terrible mother," were her first words before collapsing into tears on our couch. Apparently, she'd finally read Sarah's journal, the one documenting all of Claire's abuse over the years. Sarah had sent it to my dad after our talk, and he insisted my mom read every word. Between sobs, Mom confessed that she'd spent decades making excuses for Claire's behavior because acknowledging the truth meant facing her own failures as a parent. She'd convinced herself that Claire was just strong-willed and particular rather than admitting her daughter was cruel and manipulative. The revelation hit her like a freight train when she realized she'd enabled the mistreatment of Sarah, a woman who'd never been anything but kind to her. The most surprising twist came when Mom revealed something none of us knew. Claire had been in therapy as a teenager after incidents at school, bullying other girls and spreading vicious rumors. The therapist had suggested Claire might have narcissistic tendencies, but Mom and Dad dismissed it as normal teenage drama and switched therapists. Looking back, Mom sees that moment as their biggest failure as parents. They chose denial over getting Claire the help she needed. As for Claire herself, she's created her own reality where she's the victim of a family conspiracy. She's been posting cryptic quotes on social media about betrayal and blood not always being thicker than water. Last week she started a private blog detailing her journey to healing after family trauma. According to my cousin who found it, Claire portrays herself as a loving mother and wife whose family turned on her for one mistake. No mention of the multiple affairs, the years of bullying Sarah, or any accountability whatsoever. The extended family has mostly rallied around Tom and the kids. Claire's favorite aunt, who previously defended her, switched sides after witnessing Claire's behavior at a family dinner last week. Claire showed up uninvited, demanded to see her children, and when Tom calmly explained it wasn't her scheduled visitation day, she threw a glass of wine at him and screamed that everyone was poisoning her kids against her. The kids witnessed the whole thing, which only reinforced the court's decision on custody. Sarah and I have become the unexpected support system for Tom and the kids. We have the kids over every Friday for movie night to give Tom some breathing room. They're doing better than expected. Kids are resilient. But my niece has started seeing a child therapist to work through everything. Last session, she told the therapist she was sad but also relieved because Mommy isn't angry all the time anymore. Broke my heart to hear that. The most unexpected outcome? Sarah and I have never been closer. Facing this storm together showed us how solid our foundation really is. We're talking about starting a family of our own soon, something we'd been hesitant about while Claire was still a dominant force in our lives. Sarah's worried about the timing, wondering if it seems insensitive given Tom's situation, but he's actually been encouraging us, saying life needs to go on. I've been seeing my own therapist weekly to untangle the mess of growing up with Claire and recognizing all the ways I normalized her behavior. The therapist pointed out that my instinct to protect others, like Sarah, while accepting mistreatment myself is classic sibling survival mode. I'm learning to set boundaries I should have established decades ago. Last night, Claire called me for the first time since everything exploded. I almost didn't answer, but something told me I should. She was eerily calm, asking if I was satisfied with destroying her life. When I didn't engage with the accusation, she switched tactics, suddenly breaking down and begging me to help her get her children back. She swore she'd changed, that she was getting help, that she realized what she'd done wrong. For a moment, I almost believed her. Then she said something that chilled me: "I'll forgive Sarah for turning everyone against me if you help me." And there it was. Even now, she couldn't take responsibility. In Claire's mind, Sarah was still the villain who had somehow orchestrated all of this. I told Claire I'd help her on one condition. She needed to complete intensive therapy and demonstrate real change, not just words. She hung up on me. I'm left wondering if people like Claire ever truly change. Part of me hopes she does, for her children's sake. But a larger part has finally accepted that protecting myself, Sarah, and now Tom and the kids from Claire's toxicity isn't betrayal, it's self-preservation. Tom says the kids still ask about her, especially my nephew, who's too young to understand everything. How do you explain to a 6-year-old that sometimes the people who are supposed to love you the most are the ones who hurt you the worst? It's been a year since the family reunion from hell, and I honestly don't know if anyone in our family will ever look at a barbecue the same way again. So much has happened that sometimes I have to remind myself this isn't some weird TV drama I've been binge watching. Where to start? Tom and the kids moved into a new house about 6 months ago, just a few streets over from Sarah and me. The kids have their own rooms decorated exactly how they wanted. My niece went with a space theme that would make NASA jealous, and my nephew surrounded himself with dinosaurs that I swear multiply every time I visit. Tom's doing better than anyone expected. He joined a support group for people dealing with narcissistic ex-partners, started working out again, and even began dating last month. Nothing serious yet, but it's good to see him smiling. Claire. Well, Claire has gone through several transformations since I last wrote. First came spiritual Claire, who posted constantly about her journey to enlightenment and how the universe was testing her with false accusations. That lasted about 3 weeks until she realized no one was buying it. Then came victim Claire, who started a blog detailing her escape from an emotionally abusive family dynamic. She actually tried to pitch her story to a few podcasts about family trauma but stopped when one host did basic fact-checking and questioned her about the multiple affairs. The Claire we have now is perhaps the most concerning version yet. She's become eerily calm and calculated. She completed the court-mandated therapy sessions, but her therapist refused to write the recommendation letter she needed for increased custody. When I ran into the therapist at a coffee shop, small-town problems, she couldn't discuss Claire specifically but suggested I maintain strong boundaries with my sister. Not exactly a ringing endorsement. Claire now has her visitations with the kids at a supervised center. The reports from the supervisors are a mixed bag. She shows up with elaborate gifts and plans these Pinterest-perfect activities, but the second the kids mention anything about their daily life with Tom, she changes the subject or makes subtle digs. My niece picked up on it immediately and now barely speaks during these visits. My nephew still runs to hug her, which breaks my heart because you can see the conflict in his little face. He loves his mom but senses something isn't right. The real bombshell dropped 3 months ago when Claire announced she was pregnant. Yes, pregnant. And guess who's the father? None other than the Ibjin she was having an affair with. Apparently, they reconnected after all the chaos died down, and he left his wife for her. The irony of a medical professional making such questionable life choices is not lost on anyone. My parents have been in intensive therapy themselves, both as a couple and individually. Dad's transformation has been remarkable. He calls regularly to check in, has become an active grandparent to Tom's kids, and has even started going to therapy with Tom to help support the children through everything. He apologized to Sarah in a way that felt genuinely healing, took her out to lunch, acknowledged every instance of when he should have stepped in but didn't, and promised to do better. Mom's journey has been more complicated. She fluctuates between profound guilt and defensive justification. One day she's in tears about how she failed Claire by not getting her proper help, and the next she's suggesting that maybe if Sarah had tried harder to bond with Claire, none of this would have happened. Dad shuts that down quickly now, which is progress in itself. The most unexpected development in all of this? Sarah and I are expecting. She's 5 months pregnant with a little girl, and watching her pregnancy alongside Claire's has been a study in contrasts. Claire posts heavily filtered bump photos with captions about how motherhood is my true calling while not seeing her existing children for weeks at a time. Sarah quietly prepares our home, attends every appointment, and spends time reassuring our niece and nephew that this baby won't change how much we love them. Tom asked me to be his kid's legal guardian if anything happens to him. When he brought over the paperwork, we both got emotional. He said he always thought Claire's family would be in his corner because of the kids, but never imagined it would be like this. Sarah and I didn't hesitate to say yes. Those kids have been through enough. Last week, Claire showed up unannounced at our door. 6 months pregnant and oddly subdued. Sarah was at a doctor's appointment, thankfully. Claire asked to come in, and against my better judgment, I let her. She sat at our kitchen table, staring at the ultrasound photo we had stuck to the fridge, and then dropped a bomb I never saw coming. "I need you to tell me the truth," she said. Was I always like this? The question knocked the wind out of me. For the first time, I saw something resembling actual self-reflection in her eyes. I took a deep breath and told her the truth, that yes, there had always been signs, even when we were kids. I told her about the neighborhood pets that mysteriously disappeared after their owners upset her. About the girls in high school who suddenly lost friends after showing interest in guys Claire liked. About the countless times I'd covered for her, made excuses for her, cleaned up her messes. She listened without interrupting, which was a first. When I finished, she placed her hand on her stomach and whispered, "I don't want this baby to be afraid of me like my kids are." I wish I could say this was the breakthrough moment where Claire suddenly transformed into a better person. It wasn't. As quickly as the vulnerability appeared, it vanished. She stood up, smoothed her dress, and said, "Well, at least I'm pretty. Sarah's going to look like a whale by the end of her pregnancy." And just like that, classic Claire was back. I showed her to the door. The next day, she texted me asking to be in the delivery room when Sarah gives birth. When I declined, she launched into a tirade about how I've always been jealous of her and how our baby will prefer her anyway because she's naturally maternal. I blocked her number. Tom's lawyer contacted me yesterday. Claire's obgyn boyfriend is pushing her to seek full custody of the kids again. They're building a case based on the narrative that Claire has transformed through the impending birth of her child and deserves another chance with her firstborns. Tom's not worried. The documentation against Claire is substantial, but it's exhausting that she's putting everyone through this again. The most peaceful moments these days are our Friday movie nights with the kids. We've created this bubble where, for a few hours each week, none of the Claire drama exists. My niece has started calling Sarah for advice about girl stuff she doesn't want to bother her dad with. My nephew crawls into my lap during scary movie scenes, trusting me to protect him. These small gestures of trust feel monumental after everything they've been through. Sarah and I talk sometimes about what we'll tell our daughter about her Aunt Claire. How do you explain that kind of complexity to a child? For now, we're focusing on creating the stable, loving home we both wish we'd had growing up. Last night, I found Dad sitting alone on our back porch after everyone else had gone to bed. He looked at me with tears in his eyes and said, "You know what keeps me up at night? Wondering if we created this. If Claire was born this way or if we shaped her into what she became. I don't have an answer to that. Nature versus nurture is above my pay grade. What I do know is that cycles can be broken. Tom's breaking it with his kids. My parents are trying, in their own imperfect way. Sarah and I are committed to doing better with our daughter. And Claire? I hope someday she finds whatever is missing inside her that makes hurting others feel necessary. I'm not holding my breath, but stranger things have happened. In the meantime, we're learning what it means to love someone from a distance, to wish them well without allowing them to cause harm. If there's anything this whole mess has taught me, it's that family isn't just about shared DNA. It's about who shows up, who stays, who helps carry the hard things. Sometimes the family you build is stronger than the one you're born into. I never thought exposing an affair at a family barbecue would lead to all of this. Life really doesn't follow any script we try to write for it. But sitting here now, with Sarah asleep upstairs, our baby girl kicking away, and the knowledge that Tom and the kids are safe in their dinosaur and space-themed house down the street, I can honestly say I wouldn't change a thing.